Tonight on Free Minds TV, we're going to be interviewing Varrin Swearingen, who's running for state representative here in Keene, New Hampshire. And we're also going to be getting into some video from the Keene Freedom Festival. There was a little bit of an incident with the police showing up, and we'll be explaining exactly what happened. That coming up.
And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
Now, we have a full show to get to. Later in the show, we're going to be bringing you some footage from Keene Freedom Fest. It was just this past Sunday. It was held out on Railroad Square in Keene, New Hampshire. We'll be getting into that. But first, we have a special guest tonight. Varrin, who is running for state rep here in Keene, New Hampshire. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.
All right. So here in Keene, we've been getting more and more of the same. A lot of the same people getting elected over and over again, giving us bigger and bigger government. And you're running here in Keene, which seems completely the opposite. I mean, you still have a lot of the social, you're socially liberal, but you're fiscally conservative, which could possibly bring us away from this huge government in not only the fiscally conservative way, but also maybe get some of these rules and regulations off of us as well?
Well, that's the idea. I'm running so that the voters in Keene will have the opportunity to choose somebody whose primary interest is in freedom, not so much in more big government. And so that would include components of fiscal conservatism, fiscal responsibility, lowering taxes, and spending government money more responsibly, or not at all in many cases. And of course the element, as you mentioned, of the socially liberal. And personally I tend to be a little more on the conservative side, but unlike some other, you might say, right-wing type Republicans, I don't see a need to impose those kinds of views on everybody else. I believe that if you decide to live your life a certain way, far be it from me to point the gun at your head, so to speak, and tell you not to do that.
Now, you're originally from California, so I take it probably a much different scene than Keene, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And obviously, politically, Keene is fairly liberal for the state of New Hampshire. There's a lot more people advocating spending here, or even, unfortunately, an income tax or a sales tax. But you kind of saw where that kind of thinking can go in California, and I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that in California and many other states, the government has chosen to spend far more money than here in New Hampshire, and the result of that, of course, is a society that expects a lot of welfare programs and government spending, and ultimately results in higher and higher and higher taxes. And what that does, believe it or not, is drive people away who otherwise would be more than happy to stay. And that's exactly what happened to me. That whole mindset of the government owns you and your wallet is really what got me away from California. And when I looked at where to go, New Hampshire was the logical choice, being the place, the only place in the lower 48 without a state income tax or sales tax, and relatively low amounts of government regulation.
Well, I think maybe we should get into the budget issue then, because there have been budget overruns. Certainly, especially in the last couple of years, state spending has been increasing, and a lot of people are concerned about whether we're going to be able to preserve the New Hampshire advantage, which is low taxes and no income or sales tax, which is one of the reasons that New Hampshire's economy seems to be more sound than pretty much any other state from the reading I've been doing and the news reports that have come out about it. So how do you feel we have to protect the New Hampshire advantage beyond simply, obviously, if government spends too much money, they tax more, but is there anything specific that you think could address that?
Well, a change in heart, essentially. The mindset has changed over the last several years to more and more government spending, and a big component of that is education spending. Although in this last budgetary session, the state retirement fund became a big issue. And I've proposed that, well, it would not be right or fair to yank that rug out from under people who already participate. Going forward, we may want to reevaluate the wisdom, for example, of offering a defined benefit plan when for the most part in the private sector, that's proven to be absolutely disastrous. I don't think the government should really be doing that either. So those would be the kinds of solutions. And of course, as far as education funding, moving that back to the local level would be a sensible move.
Now, as far as the pension fund goes, basically just allow, obviously you would be aiming for fewer government employees. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. If you're going to have smaller government, fewer people would be working for the state. But down the road, for people entering public service now, give the expectation that they would save for their own retirement, as opposed to having a state fund that's tied to it.
Yeah, and actually, I wouldn't necessarily say that the state shouldn't have a retirement program at all, but the structure of it, I think, ought to be fundamentally different. A defined benefit plan is an inherently risky proposition that requires you to guarantee employees retirement based on future performance. There's really no way to get around that. So the alternative to that would be a defined contribution plan, one where the state would put retirement money, much like a 401k or an IRA, the state would put retirement money into an account with the employee's name on it, and they could choose how that money is invested, but it would be there for their retirement. Then you would not have budget crisis situations like we had in this last couple of years where, oh my gosh, the retirement system is underfunded for some reason or another, and we have to dump a bunch more taxpayer money into it.
Now, the social, the fiscal programs, obviously, they are social programs. I mean, retirement and education, obviously, those are a big chunk of state funding. But there's some other issues. Obviously, government really only exists, I mean, in the end, it essentially exists to keep people from killing each other, stealing from each other. So it's essentially to make and enforce laws.
Or it should be, anyways.
Right. That's the purpose of the state. And do you think that the way the state is enforcing laws and what laws they choose to enforce is having an impact on that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a big chunk of law enforcement resources that go to enforcing, you might say, victimless crimes. The debate exists now about gambling, and of course the proposals on the table, none of them are really great proposals. On one side, you have people who say we shouldn't have gambling and we should continue using law enforcement resources to stop people from gambling. On the other hand, you have people saying, oh, we should gamble and tax it. Well, how about we just not harass people who want to wager their own money?
Right. Well, the opposition has always been to private or casino gambling, because the state, I believe New Hampshire was the first state in the country to go to a lottery system to fund education or any kind of state program. So the state doesn't seem to have a problem with gambling as long as it's running it. Right.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
All right, so we're getting going down this road of victimless crimes and stuff. So this brings me to a question I had. About a year and a half ago, I wrote one of my representatives, who you would probably be replacing where you were elected, and asked him to consider voting a certain way on a marijuana decrim bill. I wanted him to vote for it, and he wrote me back threatening, calling me a lowlife. I CC'd it, sent a copy of it to the police, asked me to become a snitch for him and change my ways and change my life, accusing me of using marijuana and being a criminal. Turned into a pretty big story. If I sent you an email like that, what would your reaction to it be?
Yeah, well, I don't support harassing people for ingesting things or smoking things or whatever. I don't think those are good ideas. You could talk about cigarette smoking or marijuana cigarette smoking or alcohol or any of those things. Those are issues that I think are personal choice issues, and I would support decriminalization. I think even probably more palatable would be medical marijuana. It's doubly criminal for the government to prosecute and persecute people for whom marijuana is the only thing that really works. That strikes me as cruel and inhumane. My stance for supporting that, coincidentally, if I were to have written that same letter to that same individual, he would have had probably a difficult time of accusing me of using marijuana, given the fact that for the last dozen years or so I participate in a federally mandated drug testing program, and obviously the only way that I would still be employed is if I passed that 100%. So I don't come at this from a standpoint of, hey, I just want to smoke pot. I come at this from a standpoint of, let's spend law enforcement dollars where they really need to be spent, stopping people from encroaching on the freedom of other people. And smoking marijuana does not inherently do that.
Now, speaking of medical marijuana, I know that's something that's going to be on the books this year, in the coming year, in 2009, something that the representatives in New Hampshire will vote on. I know that over 70% of New Hampshire voters, according to a poll done by New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense, are in favor of medical marijuana. Yet, for some reason, every time it gets brought up in the House, it's shot down. It hasn't made it past the House. Do you think that...
I would support it. I would co-sponsor it.
Right.
It's not a cornerstone issue for me, but it is an issue. It's one more example of the government's doing something it should not be doing. And so I would support allowing medical marijuana, and responsible, I have to give the caveat, responsible, just like alcohol consumption, responsible use of marijuana or any other drug that a person can responsibly consume.
And I just wanted to diverge because we're talking, about contemporary issues. But as one of the underpinnings, obviously you're not going to be dealing with federal issues in the state legislature. But there is still the constitutional question. You've touched on you feel that education should be local, and clearly, while the Supreme Court ruled one way, a lot of people feel that there's no mandate for education on the state level in New Hampshire. How do you feel? I mean, what's your view on the Constitution? Would you follow it literally, or are you kind of a living Constitution type?
No, if the Constitution's to be amended, there's a process for doing that. So, to their credit, the tax and spenders did decide they wanted to amend the Constitution to include the definition of adequate education. The problem is that goes back to what I would argue is a fundamentally bad decision in Claremont 1, which has never been revisited, but which essentially states that the word cherish means pay for. Now, I don't think the word cherish means pay for, and in the state of New Hampshire, historically, it is impossible to defend that position. There were no government-funded educational institutions when the word cherish was put into the Constitution, and not for decades and decades after that. So that's an insane position for the court to take. And I believe it's the duty of the legislature to correct the court. And that's something that I would do or propose doing if I were elected.
Yeah, well, I mean, one would think that the people who wrote the document, if they had felt that that was a mandate for a fully funded, adequate education, but full state funding, that they would have been funding education for the first couple hundred years of the state's existence.
Yeah, and I think they knew how to write the word pay for if they wanted to do that.
Well, they certainly did. Well, they certainly did in other clauses where they actually did mandate funding.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we are running a little bit low on time with you here, but I just wanted to touch on this real quick before we get going.
Sure.
I know that you have the conservative views and the social views, and I just wanted to put this out to the viewers out there. When I grew up, like many other people in Keene, I just voted the straight Democratic ticket. While we can't do that this year, that was taken off the books, you have to choose each candidate, I believe, this year.
Yes, that's correct.
I would, if you've been one of these people in the past, consider voting for you, because even though you're running as a Republican, you still hold a lot of these socially liberal views. So if you think that the government shouldn't be involved in your personal life, if you're not harming another individual, that you're not going to be intruding on those. Because I think that there's a lot of people, especially with the college here, and a lot of liberal thinking out here that think, well, I don't think the government should be involved in this, but who do I have to vote for besides a Democrat that's not going to be involved in my bedroom or in what I'm doing in my leisure hours if I'm not harming someone else.
And the key phrase there is, if I'm not harming someone else. The end of the ethic that I would apply as a state representative is that the law stops harassing you when you stop harassing somebody else. In other words, if you're not causing harm to someone else, you're not committing acts of force or fraud, then there should be no legal penalty for whatever behavior it is you're engaging in. Now, there's some judgment, of course, required in exactly what behaviors those are, but right now the law goes far beyond that, and there are many Republicans who would prefer to keep it that way. I'm not one of them.
All right. Is there any last thought that you wanted to give to the viewers before they go out and cast their vote?
Well, I would say this, that if there's any thing that's a concern, I would be happy to listen. I can be reached by email anywhere in the world, and I travel all over the world, at Varrin, V-A-R-R-I-N, at Veron.com. Before, during, or after the election, if I am elected, I'll be happy to answer emails or telephone calls and address your concerns personally. And that's more than a lot of our sitting state representatives will do for you.
All right, Varrin Swearingen, we appreciate it. Good luck on Tuesday.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be getting into some of the video footage that we took from this year's Fall Keene Freedom Fest. The police were there. We have the video from it. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by Life Productions for your basic and semi-pro video production needs. From full wedding and event coverage to DVD authoring and distributions, lifeproductions.com. That's lyfproductions.com.
Free Minds TV is brought to you by freekeene.com. Freekeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeene.com.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, it's Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, this past Saturday, the 26th of October, we were at Keene Freedom Fest on Railroad Square in Keene, New Hampshire, out there covering it as part of the event. We announced that we'd be out there covering the event, and we announced it on the TV show that we would be there with a video camera to bring you guys some footage. Well, the police didn't like us being out there with a video camera, and apparently, since we're members of the press and we were out there, they assumed that because we have some certain political views that we were the sponsors of the event, and they decided to come in and bust it up. I myself, who was there with a video camera, that's all I brought was myself and a video camera, was given a summons to appear in court for having a festival without a permit. I'd like to say I did not sponsor any part of the event. I didn't arrange it at all. I was just out there as a member of the press getting coverage for it. But let's go ahead and show the clip, and we'll be right back and let you guys, the viewers, see what happened this past Sunday.
No, it was a lot of fun. Had some new people playing. There was one guy that played.
Lord, could you change your keys all the God?
We just invited. Okay. Well, whoever's organizing it needs to get a permit. It's an unlawful assembly if you don't. All right. Yeah, I don't know who does. Well, I mean, if you guys stay here, then you get in trouble for it. Guys, do you have a permit for this? I don't. Okay. Right. Okay. This is unlawful assembly. So you're gonna have to move out.
You're from Free Talk?
Free Minds TV.
All right, here's a summons for a permit.
I didn't.
All right, make sure
this isn't mine. This is not mine.
You're served with a summons. I'm going to hand you this. You need to accept it. If you don't take it, for not having a permit.
This isn't mine. I'm just standing here with a camera. I'm not doing any of it.
Free Talk TV.
I'm Free Minds TV, but that has nothing to do with this. I'm not a sponsor of this event.
That's what the flyer says, that you and Free
that has nothing to do with me,
Please take it.
Has nothing to do with me, sir.
Please take it. All right, are you telling me you don't want to be served?
Yeah, I don't want to be served.
You don't want to be served? Okay, then we're going to have to place you on arrest.
No,
Which one? You want to get served or you want to be arrested?
I guess so, but sir, I don't know what this has to do with anything.
You don't have a permit. All right.
This is a public gathering. Can we be clear? Is it power and food or is it dispersing?
Which one is it? You got to get rid of your food.
Okay. I don't have any food, but we can tell the people that do. Sure.
And you got to unplug it. You can't, if you want to use.
Okay, so then we don't have to disperse.
Plus the use of this section here, you have to have a permit.
Now it's another issue of the use of the section.
Because this is, you just can't walk in and take over this place. What about if I want to walk in and take over this place?
You're right here.
You're right here. And I want to set up my tent.
Please set up your tent. Take over right now. No one's stopping you. So,
all right, Jay, you all set?
So do I understand that if tell my guys to get them off? Don't you wish you were out looking for real criminals? Yeah, really. Come on. I know. I wish you were more too. I don't have nothing against you, but
and I don't have anything against you folks.
Except that we're public, using the public space.
Right, and it's one area of space that needs a permit.
But it doesn't, because the New Hampshire Constitution, which you're operating underneath, makes it very clear the government's by the consent of the governed, and we don't consent.
That's a fine opinion.
No, it says it right there. It's a fact. You're welcome to take a look at it.
But that's where we stand today.
Did you swear an oath to the New Hampshire Constitution?
That's where we stand today. Okay.
I see where you're coming from. Yes or no question, but it's not okay. Did you swear an oath?
All right, thanks, folks. Appreciate it.
Yes, not.
And so, as you can see, the police pretty adamant that I was the sponsor. Free Minds TV, I should say, was the sponsor, and I'm responsible for the show. But no, we were just there as members of the press out there covering the event. So, I mean, I don't know how the police believe that since we're out there covering the event, it's our responsibility, but apparently they do.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I had heard, I wasn't actually able to make it out there, but I had heard that there were some flyers that got made up. They weren't by us and we didn't approve them, that did mention that Free Minds TV was there, or they might have mentioned it as a sponsor. I don't see how either you or me or Free Minds TV is responsible for what somebody else prints on a flyer. So unfortunately, going to court over this will be a waste of time, but I really don't think the city has much of a case when it comes right down to it.
Yeah, you know, I'm fully confident that I'm going to win, but I need to take out a day off a day from work, one of my 3 personal days that I get a year, to go to the initial arraignment where I plead not guilty, and then another day to go and have a trial for it. And to me, the bureaucrats, they get paid either way, but me, I have to take time off from work to go and fight this when all I'm trying to do is be a member of the press. And one more reason I say, well, we just don't need this police state. Who is being hurt in this situation? No one. And do we really want to be paying the police to harass members of the press? Well, you guys probably have a different opinion. Some of you out there anyways, we'd love to hear it. You can email us at fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email, or leave us a number on our talkback line, 206-350-0123. Well, that's not the only thing that happened at Freedom Fest. We're going to leave you tonight with some of the more positive stuff. There were a variety of different people out there showing everyone from the people who want to work in the system with the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance and people who want to do some civil disobedience and maybe gamble with some pennies. You know, the law, yes?
I heard there were nickels this year. Maybe even a few dimes or quarters.
I did see a dime in there. Anyways, I don't think anyone was hurt. People had a great time. Even though the police did come, festivities continued. They just gave us the notice and then they left. So we're going to leave you tonight with some footage. Join us online at freemindstv.com, and we will be live on Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with an all-new episode of Free Minds Radio. Have a good night.
One day after Pumpkin Festival.
We're here at Freedom Fest, and Lauren's got out of jail, and that's good. And I'm having a good time. It's a really fun time here.
I also run the New Hampshire Free Press, the newspaper I've been running for almost 3 years, I guess. And has Liberty and Freedom Artist news. And we got the Liberty Scholarship Fund here. This is a scholarship fund to help people get their kids out of the public schools.
I'm Jesse, and I'm here representing Bureaucrash, an organization that helps other liberty-minded people, liberty-associated people, whether they be Ron Paul Republicans, agorists, anarchists, you name it, network together, and they actually offer resources for you, handouts, flyers, pamphlets, everything actually. The one guy that runs it, Pete Air, right now, he offered me a flip phone or a flip camera to record all this, which is really cool, you know. So basically it's just a huge networking organization. They have blogs, they promote news, they do a whole bunch. It's not just networking, but like very liberty oriented. They I don't know, I'd have to say they're the most liberty oriented organization that actually goes out of their way to do some things in like DC and whatnot. I can't think of anybody else that stands up down there, but
50. I'll owe you 50. Yeah.
So now, how do I bet? Is it
throw in a penny? Whatever your bet wants to be. Go ahead and roll the dice.
What do you mean? Whatever my bet wants to be?
You can throw in as much money as you want.
Right. 5 cents.
5 cents. Okay.
For all 3?
Yep. Okay. If you'd have gotten one of these, then you'd have taken out.
Oh, okay.
Whatever amount.
So now I gotta bet again.
I'll wait for you to come around on the table.
Okay. All right.
All right.
We're here with Matt Simon from the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy. We've talked to you many times over the years, Matt, about what you guys are doing to help change the laws in New Hampshire for marijuana. What's going on now, especially coming up on election season here in New Hampshire?
We have talked many times, Toby. I was beginning to think you didn't like me anymore. It's been so long. We've been working behind the scenes with the election, trying to help favorable candidates get through November 4th. The legislature for the next 2 years is going to be composed of 424 citizen legislators who will ultimately determine what happens with marijuana policy reform in New Hampshire over the next 2 years. So we went back to the drawing board a little bit after HB 1623 died. We did some work to find out who our friends are in the legislature and who the new candidates are that are willing to support us, and we're trying to help them get elected. We're trying to spread information to the public, and next year we're going to make New Hampshire the next medical marijuana state. 12 medical marijuana states, 71% of the people in the state voters are for a medical marijuana law, and we think it's time, so we're going to focus on that, pass it in 2009, and move on from there.
All right, so your voter who's going out to the polls this November 4th, not really sure who to vote for, both on the national level and on the state level, to help reform marijuana laws. Is there any way that you guys are helping them out, anywhere they can go to help get some more information?
Well, the place I would go would be nhcommonsense.org, which we just put our voters guide up the other day. It runs down from the president race, U.S. Senate, Congress races, and we have a lot more information on the state legislative races that people have to email us to get. But there's plenty of information about the top races on our website, and we encourage people to look that stuff up and get informed.
All right, Matt Simon, as always, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We're here with Dale Everett from AnarchyInYourHead.com. What is Anarchy in Your Head? There's a variety of different people here, some of them working in the system. I'm taking it Anarchy in Your Head is out of the system.
It's out of the system. I'm certainly promoting a lot of out-of-the-system activism and out-of-the-system belief systems, but it's also entertainment. You know, it's just sometimes I'm just making fun of politicians and just for entertainment purposes. For entertainment purposes, and that's usually stuff that appeals to a lot of people, even if they aren't anarchists.
So you have a comic strip, an anarchist comic strip that you release several times a week, right? I'll bet Anarchy in Your Head. Wednesday and Friday. I'll bet AnarchyInYourHead.com. What inspires you for the comics? Is it just stuff that's going on in the news that day, or just whatever's coming to mind, something that's bothering you?
Sometimes it's whatever comes to mind. Like, a lot of the subjects, sometimes I'll be topical. I did something about gay marriage recently because there's a big thing going on in California right now, big controversy there, where they're trying to put an amendment there, but sometimes it's just whatever. Sometimes it's whatever's in my queue when it comes time to do the comic strip. Whatever ideas I've put aside to do comics. So.